Diablo Immortal, Digimon Survive, Evil Dead, Ghostwire Tokyo, God of War, Ragnarok, and many, many more. What do they all mean? We'll find out in a few. And impossible mission to you. My name is Rob.
My name is Prob.
This week we're talking about something that sounds very vague on first impressions. And it is. It's the year 2022. But specifically, we are going to be talking about, is it a good or bad year for games? In keep with the idea that, delays. That's what we're talking about here. Delays and 2022.
I'm really thankful you got more specific there, because when you said we're going to be talking about 2022, I was thinking, that's a very big subject.
Yeah. Well, how long have you got? Because we're going to take all of it. Yeah.
What are we talking about specifically? Need to narrow it down. Compartmentalize.
Yeah. 2022, it's just finish that run through of titles. Diablo Immortal, Digimon Survive, Evil Dead, Ghostwire Tokyo, God of War, Ragnarok, Gotham Knights, Gran Turismo 7, Hogwarts Legacy, Lord of the Rings, Gollum, Rainbow Six Extraction, Resident Evil, Reverse, Warhammer 40k, Darktide, Vampire the Masquerade, Bloodlines 2, Prince of Persia, Sands of Time remake, for Horizon Forbidden West, the PlayStation 5 version of Cyberpunk 2077. There's probably tons and tons.
Elden Ring is supposed to be next year, isn't it?
Well, that wasn't delayed though, but yeah,
it wasn't delayed, but
it's a big title. It is a big title that is coming out next year, which is kind of a nice little segue part as the conversation point of the day.
Yeah,
which is 2022 is going to be a complicated year because there's games delayed from 2021, unannounced games, and there's 2022's own games.
Yeah.
So the question has to be asked there: is that good for games, or is it bad?
See, on the surface, right, and this is purely on the surface, cosmetically, it's good for games. People are going to look at it and go, oh, it's going to be an amazing year for games. There's going to be so many games coming out. And they're going to go, oh, we're going out of our minds. There's so many games, so much choice. Kid in a candy store. It is, isn't it?
Yeah, we use the analogy in other mediums, like kid in the candy store. So I'll just pick what I want. I'll just pick the good stuff. But in gaming, it's kid in the candy store, so give me all of the candy.
See, there are a few things...
You can't have all the candy.
There are a few things that people forget about the kid in the candy store, right? Now, anyone who is a parent and has children and has taken the child into any kind of toy store or candy store knows the end result is the child is crying their eyes out. They're bawling their eyes out at the end of it because they couldn't have everything. They couldn't have everything.
The metaphor that works here, it's Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, only you're the fat German kid who gets stuck in the pipe.
Augustus Gloop.
Yes, that's the one. That's what's going to happen with people who want everything in the video game industry. Use this metaphor. But to get to the core of the topic, 2021, there's a lot of games that have been delayed. 2022, a lot of games are coming out. Many of them haven't been announced yet. There's only so much money. There's only so much time. And certain companies have showed themselves to be better at dealing with stacked release schedules than others. Let's take Ubisoft, for example. Ubisoft... I don't want to say this in a gentle way because I don't like Ubisoft, so I'm going to say it in a crude way. But they haven't got a clue what they're doing.
They suck.
Take, for example, the 2020. It was release of the next gen. Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and PlayStation 5. We've got big games. We've got two big games. We've got Watch Dogs Legion, I should say, and Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Which came out within a matter of weeks.
Yeah, they basically sacrificed their Watch Dogs to Assassin's Creed and just offered up its carcass.
Yeah, the sad part about that is Watch Dogs Legion is a much better game than Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Wait, I know loads of people.
I know loads of people went, oh, Assassin's Creed Valhalla is a great game. It's a bloated game. It's full of all sorts of crap that doesn't need to be there.
There's a thing on the PlayStation 5 now where if you look at your games that you've played, games that you got trophies for, it'll tell you how long you've been on them. Do you know how long I spent on Watch Dogs 2? 17 hours. Yeah. And I completed it. Completed it from beginning to end.
But I mean, there's so much to do in Assassin's Creed Valhalla to justify the expensive price tag. And this is the point, right? This kind of leads us on to the point we were making about there's not enough money. In order to justify Assassin's Creed being, costing that much, they filled it with all sorts of stuff that it just did not need. I mean, even the expansion that's coming out is another cost on top of it, which pushes the game to 200 hours? It's already over 100 hours.
You kind of zigged when that conversation wanted you to zag. When I say there's not enough money, I mean, people have a certain amount of expenditure. They make a certain amount of money and have a certain amount set aside for games. Games cost £70 now. And when in the past 2 years, there's not been a lot of big AAA games. So, it's £70 maybe 4 times tops.
Yeah.
Personally, I can justify 2, but generally, I'd say about 4 tops in a year.
Yeah.
That's going to be kind of a conservative estimate because, like I said, there's going to be all of 2021's delayed games and there's going to be all of 2022's new games. And on the evidence of how Ubisoft, this one company, have managed a stacked release schedule, and when you put many other companies, indie companies, all the AAA publishers, Microsoft, Nintendo, Sony, when you put all of these into this field where they don't really know how to schedule stuff to stop it from conflicting, we're going to create this year, which is going to be a mess because it's going to be release A swallowing release B, and it's going to happen over and over and over again because there's not much space between these. Not much space between these events happening. It's going to be a lot of games that a lot of people put a lot of time into getting swallowed by the massive vastness of all the releases that are going to be coming out.
Just to put an analogy on this, because it is the perfect analogy. Do you know when in Africa you have the vast plains, and you have all of the animals and everything like that, and then you have the rainy season. We've seen it all in the wildlife documentaries. And then all the herbivores go to the water to drink, but then it becomes a feeding frenzy for all of the carnivores. Yeah. It's literally going to be that, isn't it?
Well, I was thinking it really went that way because I thought there's only so much water in the reservoir and they'd all drink it all and there's not much left, so they've got to get everybody has a littler and littler share. Both metaphors work.
Yeah, it's literally going to be a feeding frenzy for the big names, and the indies are going to fall by the wayside because they're not going to sell enough to keep them in business.
The bigger ones will be all right, but generally I think there was a story years and years ago now, but it's one that gets put out a lot because it's just frightening how certain companies measure certain success. I think it was Resident Evil 5 or 6. I can't remember which. It sold for about 4 or 5 million copies, and Capcom says, yeah, that's not enough. That's a failure.
That came on the back of Final Fantasy 13, Square Enix selling a certain however many millions of copies of Final Fantasy 13 and saying it was a failure.
But that is going to be common because, like as I said, there's going to be a lot of carnivores at this, body of water, and there's only so much to go around. There's only so much you can share. There's only so much time. There's only so much money. There's only so much space that you can put these games. So things will swallow each other.
And you're gonna get a lot of these AAA titles kind of fighting each other. It's going to be like when they have those massive walruses on the beach that are basically attacking each other. I'm still with the wildlife documentary thing.
Well, it's okay.
It's going to be like that.
They're good metaphors.
It's going to be like EA's walrus versus, I don't know, Take-Two's walrus.
And then Ken Watanabe in the background going, let them fight.
Yeah.
Which is always a better way to solve a situation. But that is going to happen. It all depends on how much these companies talk to each other.
I don't think they will. See,
because if they talk to each other and they're smart about it, they could circumvent a lot of what could potentially happen. If they're stupid like Ubisoft, it's going to be a mess and games are going to get eating each other alive. I
don't think they will talk to each other. The main reason I don't think they'll talk to each other is because history kind of bears that out.
Yeah.
Video game companies, the publishers in particular, not so much the developers. The developers, for the most part, they tend to be okay. Talking to each other. One dev will talk to another dev from a different company. Devs tend to talk to each other about stuff. Publishers, on the other hand...
Yeah, because devs are friends with other devs, yeah.
Yeah. Publishers, on the other hand, they're a lot more corporate. And I mean, you just need to look at EA, for example, right? Do you know one of EA's founding principles? Do you know what it was?
No.
Was look after the little guy. You know, it was to treat the devs, these small development teams, treat them like the artists that they viewed them as. You know, what's his name? The guy who founded Electronic Arts actually had the idea that if these guys were creatives in any other field, you know, music, books, movies, whatever, they would be treated like rock stars. So why not treat them like rock stars in video games? They are true creatives. That's how we should treat them.
This is going back a long way. This is the Mega Drive era. So
yeah, exactly.
A lot for
and
EA.
That's what I mean. Things have changed a lot for EA. They're not like that anymore, and that's because of corporate stuff. That's because of executives, corporate structure. All of that stuff has gone and fallen by the wayside. So they won't talk to each other at an executive level.
So there's many things that sort of fall out of this. One, you've said it earlier. Indie games will bear the brunt of this.
Yeah, they will suffer, I reckon.
The last 18 months, 2 years, they've basically been vital for the video game industry when there's not been a lot of releases, indie games. Hades deserves a lot of respect for giving a lot of people a lot of hours of gameplay in a small game.
Yeah.
There's probably other titles I'm not thinking of. But as soon as it's all of these butting heads of AAA publishers trying to find space, indie games are going to really fall by the wayside, and it's only going to be the likes of Annapurna and Devolver Digital will really have the sway to, maybe Raw Fury as well, to have the sway to stand in this hyper-competitive market. But yeah, go on.
One of the things that is going to become clear, right, over 2022, and I think there will be questions asked a lot in 2022 about games press, about games journalists, because a lot of the press will probably focus on the big releases, and so I think a lot of people who work in the indie scene or support the indie scene will start asking serious questions about bias in the games press towards the big developers, because it's not as obvious now.
Not to toot our own horn, but we did an episode of Impossible Mission where we said there's a PlayStation bias in the press.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was a while ago.
There is a definite bias in the press towards big names, big titles, big publishers, right? Yeah. Over small ones. There is a definite bias in the press towards them. And I'm not saying that is a logical thing. It makes sense. The big names draw people to click on their articles, watch their videos, that sort of thing. But I think that will be taken to the extreme over 2022. And you'll see there will be a marked difference in coverage.
Yeah, there will. I don't think if a game like Hades was released in 2022, I don't think it will stand a chance in hell, frankly.
Well, I mean, we saw it last year already, to a degree. The fact that Hades, which is a much better game than The Last of Us 2, in terms of story, in terms of narrative structure, character relationships, the whole thing. It basically, look, I'm going to annoy some Last of Us 2 fans, but it pisses all over Last of Us 2. Hades is a much better game, right?
Yeah.
It deservedly got Game of the Year from the award for Game of the Year from loads of different places. But if you look at the mainstream, if you look at the mainstream, Last of Us 2 was the best game because reasons.
Marketing. It's because basically the Oscars throw, like the publishing distribution company throw a lot of money behind it, and then it gets the award, even though there's things people realise are better, you know.
Yeah.
But all of this to one side, there's two questions that are really going to be asked. The first one is release dates.
Yeah.
Things haven't been really announced yet. Will be coming out in 2022. And with this collection of things brewing, all of these games like fighting for retail space, a question has to be asked about, should we really have release dates? Well,
I don't think we should have release dates. I think having seasons is enough. Saying it's going to be out spring, summer, autumn. By the way, Americans, it's autumn, not fall. Just because the leaves fall off the trees doesn't mean it's called fall. It's
very
autumn.
Literal.
Yeah. I saw the Michael McIntyre thing about it. You know, they don't call it a pavement, they call it a sidewalk because they have to walk on the side of the road. When it was pavement, they kept getting knocked over.
It was very, very literal.
Yeah. But this is the thing. Seasons allow more time because you haven't given an accurate date. You haven't given a specific date for something to come out. And so it allows the developers to have a bit more freedom with finishing the game off. They can say it's going to be out in spring. And so you've got a 3-month period. If you need more time, you can say, we're having to push it back to autumn, right? That's fine. People are more accepting of that as well. Weirdly enough, in terms of marketing, people are actually more accepting of spring, summer, autumn, winter because it's only 4. And in their brain, right, in people's minds, 4, right, saying we're going from spring to autumn is actually mentally a shorter time period than saying it's going back from March to September.
Yeah, I can understand that. And the other question...
It's because 2 is a smaller number than 6. That's why. But we're not going to go into that.
Thank you, Captain Maths. I never knew that.
But anyway, the other thing as well, though, about release dates, right?
Yeah.
When you have these staggered release dates, when you have these release dates, and if they're piling on top of each other, all right, I'm just going to read out a game, and I want you to tell me how long do you think it's going to take to finish that game? So something like Stalker 2.
I think I've heard them say it's going to be about 40 hours.
Yeah. Elden Ring.
Me, about 170.
So something like, I don't know, Avatar, Frontiers of Pandora.
About 20 minutes when I realised what I put in and I say, no, don't want. But honest answer, 20 hours.
Yeah. Age of Empires 4.
Forever, because those games don't really have a completed...
Well, I will say Age of Empires 4 is due out late 2021, but we're probably still going to be playing it in 2022. Ghostwire Tokyo.
15 hours.
Forspoken, Callisto Protocol, that Final Fantasy Origins game, whatever you want to call it.
Forspoken, it looks like it's an open world adventure game, so let's say 60 or 70. What was the next one you said after that?
Hogwarts Legacy, I think it was. Callisto Protocol,
that's a survival horror, so let's say about 12 hours. Hogwarts, about 100. And you said Final Fantasy Origins, I'd say about 100 too. Yeah.
And that's just the stuff that's kind of console PC based. We haven't even talked about Nintendo.
Yeah. What's the point in the time, though, that you're talking about?
My point is that if all these games... Right, so let's take Stalker. You give a definite time period for that, 40 hours, yeah?
That's what they said, I think, yeah.
Now, here's the thing, right? There is research out that suggests that the majority of people who play video games are over 30, work, have maybe 1 or 2 kids, in a stable relationship, and can only play video games for about 8 hours a week, which is just over an hour a day. Now, if you only have an hour a day and you're playing playing a game that takes 40 hours, that's going to take you 5 weeks to finish the game. You're not going to want to buy another game for about 5 weeks.
So we're getting in. We're stepping back a little bit in the topics here, but it's still incredibly relevant.
Yeah,
because that is the average gamer. It's not anybody else but the normal guy who plays games.
When you talk about people who are gamers, that is purely the average gamer, scientifically proven, by the way. Researched, I should say, not scientifically proven. So all those people who play hours and hours of video games, yes, they're gamers as well, but they're a different type of gamer. The more average gamer is people who only have a limited time to play games.
Yes. Leading on from that, like the release schedule thing, which I honestly think can go and do one, video game culture would be a lot better. The discourse would be a lot better if things weren't announced as a release date. And as a byproduct of that...
you mean things weren't announced as a release date, don't you?
Yeah. There's no release date announced. It'd be healthier as far as the discourse and all that, yeah.
Like they do in movies. Movies don't do that, do they? Movies kind of give you an idea of when it might be out, but they don't give you a specific date.
They'll just tell you when it's out when there's a promotional trailer.
Yeah.
Which is, like, pretty final in the production
Yeah, that's
process.
pretty late on in the production.
Yeah, the other thing is, if there was no release date, there'd be no crunch, because they won't be pushing to hit a certain date. So there's a lot of things going on here, as far as 2022, but the crux of it is, it's going to be full. Too full when you put into consideration things like the average gamer, the way games are produced, production schedules, how much time there is in a day, and everything competing. It's going to be a complicated game year for gamers.
I'm glad you said full, because we come back to the kid in the candy store, because there was one other result from the kid in the candy store analogy that we didn't touch on.
Go on.
And it's for the kid who gets everything. What happened to the kid whose parents walk in with them and they say, I want that, and 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 their parents get them everything, or they have the money to buy everything, and they go home with their pockets stuffed with all this candy, and then they sit there in a corner with all these wrappers around them going, Mom, I feel ill. Do you see what I'm going with this?
Yeah, I'm trying to turn that into something gaming related, but essentially you'd end up...
If you gorge on video games to the point where you literally do not even leave your house...
he's found a link. Okay.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. And
that's bad.
I honestly think next year will provide ample opportunity to do nothing but play games.
Yeah, but the thing is, you've got...
I don't mean this from a negative perspective. It's good to play games. It's good to have a varied experience of games and play lots of different games. But at the same time, when you're satisfied... When the release schedule satisfies every single thing and you act on every single thing...
That's not a good habit. It's a bad thing if you lose your self-control because you have so many video games. Basically, your eyes are bigger than your belly, right? And when you reach that point, it can have quite damaging psychological effects, which I'm not going to go into, but it can also have quite damaging physical effects as well. And those are real, actual things that can happen. Now, I know that... Now, I know there was that recent article in the Telegraph, which, was based on that Chinese state media article about video games being a kind of a spiritual opium. And I know that the lady who wrote the Telegraph article was, she's written a book about a video game streamer being accused of killing an anti-game psychologist, yada, yada, yada. Not going into that. The point of the article, though, was that video games are kind of pandemic. And when you have this situation where people are, kind of inadvertently going to be harming themselves, not through any kind of obvious means, but they're going to be inadvertently doing it because they're so enamored with video games. That kind of lends credence to articles like that. The article even recited Gamer's Thumb as being, a problem. And yes, Gamer's Thumb can be a problem, but it's easily recoverable. And it is like RSI. It's something that you get over time.
Yeah, there is something that you have to address when sort of wrapping up in this. And you could say, but I don't need to buy all of these when they're new. I can just buy them later. I can just buy them when they're cheap. Many sub things come from that. One, there was that thing recently where the developer of Days Gone, I think, misguidedly called out the video game community for not buying it when it was new, because if they did, it would have been successful. There's that. Secondly, you forget about things. Yeah. Thirdly, buying things cheap doesn't really help developers, but that's basically a reiteration of the first point. Yeah.
It's a sad thing that people will want to wait to buy things cheap, okay? But it's also a damning indictment of the video games industry and the cost of games. Right. I asked this question a long time ago, and I still haven't been given an answer, and I'm curious. I'm very, very curious, because all of these publishers video games companies are businesses. They're designed for profits, yeah? They have shareholders, they have people who need their investment checks, everything like that. I am curious how much of the cost of a video game, say the brand new video games cost 70 quid. I'm curious how much of that is the development cost, how much of that is the publishing cost, the distribution cost, everything like that, and how much of that is profit. What percentage of that £70 is profit? Because if the percentage of that is over a certain amount...
They'll never announce that sort of thing. That's sort of peering behind the velvet.
Yeah, I know. Isn't it? But the thing is, video games, because of all sorts of things that have been happening more recently, are going to have to become more open and more transparent, just like other businesses have, like the movie industry.
Yeah, the movie industry's really went through the ringer recently. But the core up for this, the reason why we've zipped and zopped all over the place, we talked about price, we talked about development, we talked about distribution, marketing, all of this stuff, is because it all feeds off each other.
Yeah.
When something is too full, it reveals the cracks. It's basically like putting too much sand in a glass. The more you put in, the more the cracks appear in the glass, and the more it struggles to contain all of this stuff. It reveals the weaknesses.
Yeah.
So the fact that we've jumped all around is because this stuff reveals weaknesses.
Yeah. And it also reveals just how unhealthy the competition in the video games industry is towards the smaller developers.
Yeah.
One of the things that I worry about with 2022 having such a full release slate, right, is the inevitable constipation of 2023, because it will happen. 2023 will, I reckon, not be as barren a year as 2022 as 2020 and 2021, but I reckon that video games releases will slow down in 2023 because 2022 has been so full. What they should do, and this is a suggestion to all the video games companies, they should do exactly what you said, stagger the releases and talk to each other, and maybe give developers more time to basically finish things off.
Yeah.
And get rid of the stupid idea of release dates. Just get rid of it totally.
And stop treating video games as a buffet and more, and treat it as what it is. It's a hobby. It's a treat. It's a thing to spend hours here and there with. It's not the be all and end all of your life and to fill every little gap with every little thing. The
thing is, all we need next year for video games is at the end of the year, December 31st, for somebody, some indie dev, and I really hope there's an indie dev that does this, just for the shits and giggles, releases a game called Wafer Thin Mint.
Sure, Devolver Digital.
Just call it Wafer Thin Mint, and 2022 video games just explodes all over the place.
Yeah. So I appreciate that we thrown a lot at you there, a lot of ideas, a lot of concepts, a lot of just everything, really. We want to know what you think about what we had to say. Is 2022 going to be great, and are we just scaremongering? Or is 2022 going to be a bit too dense, so it's going to reveal a lot of the problems that we discussed? Is there something that we missed, in fact? Comment below. We do want to talk to you in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed what we do. If you really liked what we do, check us out on Patreon. There's a link down there in the description and at the end of this video. Some Patreons are on the screen now, and thank you to each and every one of you awesome people. This has been Impossible Mission. We have been The Geek Show. See you next time.